Excited to be joining everyone for today's webinar. Don't keep that data to yourself. There's an exclamation point there, so we got to get extra loud. So today we're really going to be focusing on some best practices for data democratization within Adobe Analytics and within your organization, and how to set yourself up for data-informed success. As Monique mentioned, my name is Eric Matisoff. I'm the Senior Evangelist here at Adobe, focused on analytics and data science. You can find me on Twitter, Measure Slack, LinkedIn, basically wherever you want to ask some questions, please go ahead and do so. Jen?
Hey guys, it's Jen Lasser, Principal Product Manager for Adobe Analytics. Excited to be here with you all today.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. So during our session today, we have really 4 steps that we're going to be focused on for data democratization success. First, we're asking that you think about your audience. Next, begin crafting a curated experience for that audience. And then think about how you can simplify your insights. And finally, use the right delivery method to deliver that success. Now, we do have a couple of housekeeping items on top of that as well. First, I'd like you to take advantage of the poll questions that will be popping up throughout the session. So please share your thoughts along the way. I'd also like to thank Russ Whitchurch from our team, who will be handling a lot of the hard-hitting questions that you have for us in the Q&A pod. So thank you, Russ, and thank you to everyone that's going to be asking those questions. And then finally, keep in mind that the webinar is being recorded, and so we'll be sure to post it as soon as we can to our video channels as well. And so to jump in, the very first thing that we are going to talk about is thinking about your audience. And it's terribly important for you to be thinking about your audience when you're sharing insights, when you're sharing data, when you're sharing projects in Workspace. You know, I think about this webinar right now. It would be a very different webinar if Jen and I were presenting to our parents or grandparents. We would probably not even be talking about Adobe Analytics at all. We would instead perhaps talk about the Golden Girls. You have to think about the same thing when you're sharing information across your organization. Your audience roles, we've tried to narrow them down for this session into 3 distinct groups: executives, analysts, and newbies or novices. And the reason that we've done that is so that throughout the session, all 4 topics that we're discussing, we're going to pepper in the different ways in which you should be speaking to executives or delivering insights and sharing data to analysts, or informing and providing guardrails for your newbies or novices. The types of things that these different roles will ask: an executive will often say, I need data to help ensure I'm making a smart decision, or perhaps push me away from making a dumb one. An analyst would say something along the lines of, I need more data to ensure the insights I provide are researched completely. And finally, the newbie would say something along the lines of, I need data, and I don't know exactly how to get it or even understand it. And so before we move on, we have some recommendations for some do's and don'ts for you. And to be quite honest, they're actually don'ts and do's, because that's the way that I like to organize things in my brain. So the very first thing that we don't want you to do is start with data. And that's kind of counterintuitive, right? When you're working with your audiences, the first thing that we analysts love to jump into is, hey, let's talk about data. But I'd rather you not. We're not recommending that you ignore data completely. Just don't start with it. Don't start with, well, what dimensions, what metrics, what segments do you want access to? Because that's a way to help drive questions of like, well, I just want everything. It reminds me of the Henry Ford quote about, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse. It's the same concept here. Don't start with data. Don't start with asking, what do you want? Instead, similarly, you also don't want to ask for their visualization preferences. Instead, you want to be thinking about that on your own as you're developing the insights that you want to share over to them. And definitely, absolutely last but not least, don't take, I'm just curious for an answer. If you ask someone a question about why they want to know X, Y, or Z, and they respond with, I'm just curious, ask again, ask again, ask again. Focus on what they're actually going to do with that data. If they answer with, well, my boss asked me, maybe that's a good opportunity to reach out to their manager or boss to try to dig in a little further. So some do's to think about. The first do that I have for you is ask about the potential decision. So think about, well, where are you going to activate the decision based on this data? And that's something, honestly, that you should be starting way earlier in the process as you're thinking about the data collection. Where are the actions you're going to be taking based on these different data pieces that you have? The second piece to think about that you should be doing is keeping that mindset of a RACI, where you're thinking about, is this person responsible or accountable for the decisions that are defined by this data? Or do they just need to be consulted or informed by the data and actions that are taking place thanks to this data? And so I'm not asking you to build a RACI spreadsheet in Excel and go through all of that pain. Instead, just as you're having conversations, keep it in the back of your mind. Now, one thing I do want you to do is become an unrelenting detective. Keep asking those questions, somewhere between 3 to 7 questions to pick a couple of prime numbers. Should be how many times you're digging in and digging in and digging in before you actually get to the root answer of a question like, why do you need this data? Or what are you looking to achieve by accessing this data? Now, a fourth do for you is to actually help identify what the preferred analysis destination is for your stakeholder or your end user. Now, we'll be going through all sorts of different analysis destinations like the mobile app and workspace and beyond, but those are the types of things you should be talking about with your stakeholders. And finally, last but certainly not least, is the need to discuss interest in analyzing further. Is your stakeholder interested in just getting the insight and saying, okay, great, I've got one graph, I've got the recommendation, and that's all I need? Or will they want to tinker with that data more and more? There's no wrong answer there, folks. But the important thing is that you know the answer based on your stakeholders' needs. Now, for those of your analysts and your newbies that do say, you know what, I would like to analyze a little bit further, there's a way that you can actually, within Analysis Workspace, stay on top of their progress, especially with the projects that they're creating on their own. And so as an administrator, you have the opportunity to click into your project components and click Show All in order to see all of the different projects across your entire organization in order to dig into them and basically check in on Gina or Ben as is displayed here within this video. And so it's a great way to make sure that your end users are getting good value out of the insights that you're sharing, as well as the projects that they're creating as well.
All right, thanks, Eric. So building from the audiences that Eric just kind of walked us through, you've got your executives, your novices, your analysts. The next step that we recommend for a successful data democratization program is really crafting a curated experience for those different groups of users. So now, most of the time we talk about curation, we're talking about curating components, the dimensions, the metrics they see, and that's really a great place to start. But what we want to explore in this step are the various different levers you have to pull to be able to create a unique experience per persona or group that you want to share data to. So this section leads a little bit more into data governance, but we think that data governance is the key to being successful in Adobe Analytics and when sharing your insights. So the 3 main levels of curation that we're going to dive into in Adobe Analytics are the admin console in the Experience Cloud, Virtual Report Suite Curation, or VRS, and Project Curation. So let's take a little bit of a deeper look into each of these and see how they can contribute to helping you build a good data democratization and experience for your users. Now, let's start with the Experience Cloud Admin Console. I think the first main decision you need to make when you're evaluating your different stakeholders and business users is, do they need to be an admin or not? Admins, as you know, have full control over the analytics UI, and they can also have perhaps a detrimental effect on your data collection if they don't know what they're doing. They have all the keys to the analytics kingdom. So for companies that we've worked with that we see are doing this best and have a good strategy for user management, we find that they have about 10% or less of their users assigned as admins. With less admins, they're able to better govern everything that's created in Adobe Analytics, as well as all the data being collected. when there's a more focused group that can maintain Adobe Analytics. So the first tip here in this section is really to take a look at your user breakdown and see what percentage of admins you have versus non-admins or just regular users. Now, after you've determined who your admins are, they're the folks that can then go and create crafted product permission groups for you. These are ways that you can group, business units or third parties that you're working with, or even the audience personas like Eric just talked about. So we encourage you to create different permission groups for new users, for different levels of analysts, and even for your executives as well. And one of the first things you can do in the product profile that you're building is limit the report suites like we just showed here. You can limit the parent suites as well as the virtual report suites that are available to this group of users. And that's really the most permanent way that you can control the data set that these users have available when they're consuming the insights that you're sharing with them. The next thing that you can do in product profiles is, beyond limiting report suites, is limiting the actual components they have access to. So this is the dimensions and the metrics that they'll see available within those report suites. We recommend removing dimensions and metrics that may have sensitive information in them that you don't want your broader organization to see or to leverage. You can also use this to remove dimensions or metrics that may have been discontinued and you're kind of resting them and resetting them for a new purpose. Limiting components in this way is another more permanent way to remove components that your end users are going to see and be able to work with. The final thing that we like to highlight when creating product profiles is component creation. So when you're sharing profiles out and putting users in these profiles, you want to think about who you want to allow to create segments and calculated metrics and other things within the product. We encourage you to let users create these things, but you want to keep in mind that you want to have a way to govern everything that's being added to the tool. So if you have a new set of users that maybe don't know Adobe Analytics as well, you can use the product profiles here to remove their ability to create segments or to create calculated metrics. Some customers that we talk with like to manage all of this stuff from a centralized team and then share out the components they want their users to be leveraging. So this is one way where you can kind of limit the control that these different user groups have within the product. So there's so much more to the admin console and the permissions that you can give to your users, but these are just a few of the common ways that we see different organizations crafting curated experiences for their users through admin permissions. And we have a YouTube playlist put together with a lot of what we highlighted here, plus more, adobe.ly/AA governance. So if you want to dive into this particular topic a little bit more past the webinar, we highly encourage you to go there. Okay, so moving on to the second way that you can create curated experiences. Beyond the admin console, in Adobe Analytics, you can control the data set and the components that your users see even further using virtual report suites. Now, virtual report suites have a ton of powerful settings in them. We're going to focus on two of the options in here. First, the settings, where you can apply different segments to a report suite to really narrow down the data set that your users are going to be interacting with. This is a great centralized way to manage issues like bots and filtering those out, as well as managing what type of traffic you want your end users to look at. For example, getting internal traffic out of the mix so they can focus on external data points. The second way to curate with virtual report suites is through component curation. This allows you to narrow the components by moving them over to the included column that the user has access to, and you can even rename them to be more relatable when they're searching in the left rail. Now, something pretty cool that we've seen some customers do is take virtual report suite curation even a step further. And what we've seen them do is create different levels of virtual report suites that unlock more and more. Then they'll map the product profiles that we talked about earlier for their various personas to each of these levels. What this does is, in your level 1, they have a small subset of components. Level 2 unlocks even more components. and level 3 even more after that. So we've seen some customers implement this strategy around unlocking more components, and sometimes they even tie it into internal training programs or certifications that they have their users go through. So as a user, graduates from one class to the next and moves up in the internal curriculum, they unlock more and more potential in Adobe Analytics by moving them to a higher profile. So just wanted to share that. I think that's a really cool way to manage your users as they mature and learn more within Adobe Analytics. Okay, so last way that you can craft a curated experience is using project curation. This is available under the Share menu in Workspace. And this narrows the set of components available even further within a project. Project curation will automatically pull in every component you use in the project already. So like orders and revenue in this example, and then you can always add more. Now, a fun fact, project curation, that's something I use every time I build a project. Not only is it helpful for when you share out to your users to limit the left rail for them, but I find it really helpful for me, the analyst, as I'm building a project and preparing to share it, to limit the left rail just to what I have in the project. It makes it super easy to grab and drag it from the left rail over into your analysis. And the way that I do that with every share is actually just going in the share modal to curate and share. And what that will do is it will automatically share the project out. And when your users open it, they'll see a narrowed left rail like you see here. All the methods we talked about narrow down the data set, narrow down the components, and really make Analysis Workspace a much more approachable space for any level of user to come into. So let's quickly recap the 3 ways that we just talked about for crafting a curated experience. This helps, like I mentioned, to simplify the data set. It also will help to simplify your insights for easier consumption, as we'll get into it a little bit further. So use the admin console to more permanently alter what a user sees in Adobe Analytics. This is like a user-based level of curation. Use virtual report suites to further tailor the data set and components for different groups. This is more of a report suite level of curation. And then finally, use project curation to further refine what components end users see on a project-by-project basis.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. That was super helpful, really interesting stuff. Next up, we're thinking about how to then simplify your insights. You have your audience, you've got a curated experience for that audience. Now it's time to start thinking about the narrative or the story that you want to tell with the data to these end users. Now, the way that I like to think about structuring my Analysis Workspace project, along with any insights that I'm sharing, is kind of going back to that grammar school essay writing concept of tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And this is something that you'll see is available within a bunch of different features within Analysis Workspace. For example, you can see here that we've actually pulled in the business question of which subscription types are driving the highest revenue per order into the panel name and the title that is described there. Now, if we wanted to add some additional context, that's where we have the opportunity to edit a description. And this is possible in any panel or visualization in order to provide that additional context. Now, you can also consider adding that instead as its own text box within Workspace. And what you'll see is that there's plenty of opportunity to add formatting along with links that direct the user exactly to where they need to be in order to follow the findings and the recommendations that you're providing them with. This project summary concept is something that Jen and I have been recommending for a little while and doing within our own analyses of at the top of every single project that we share within the organization. Now, if you want to take that a step further, you could actually build something like you're seeing here of a table of contents landing page, where we have a combination of links to other projects and data so that it's a constantly updated set of information that your end users can tap into in order to get the right answer to the question that they have at that moment. What you may have noticed, and I'll kind of sneak something that Jen's going to be talking about later, is that table of contents is actually shared as view only. That way, those end users don't have the ability to actually break it or tweak it. Now, something else that I'd like you to start thinking about is instead of just sharing the data, we've got plenty of end users that say, give me the data, give me the data, give me the data. For those users, you're thinking about your audience by giving them free-form tables. However, you also need to be thinking about providing data using our data visualizations. As you know, we've got a wealth of visualizations from bar charts to scatter charts and beyond. And so you've got to be thinking about what's the right visualization for the job. We've got so many visualizations that we try to break them up into 5 key areas between comparisons, trends, parts to whole relationships, and distributions. The ones that I'm personally aligned with and particularly love are applying conditional formatting in my tables and stacked vertical bar charts, while also thinking about line graphs at any time I'm looking to trend something. But I don't want you to stop just at providing actual visualizations. Take advantage of the settings associated with any of those visualizations that you're providing. For example, here you can see a recommendation from an analytics rockstar himself, Urs Bowler, where he actually removed all of the metrics and percentages and data from this freeform table and just applied conditional formatting. Another great way to take advantage of capabilities for visualization settings is by applying the 100% stacked bar chart. I particularly love that setting within stacked bar charts because it gives you both the parts to whole as well as the comparison capabilities that I was mentioning on the previous slide. Now for this next slide, we want to give you a sneak peek into something brand new that is just getting released over the next few weeks. And so what you can see is there's some new settings coming to your line graphs. You can click the gear there and you can choose to show the minimum or the maximum, or even apply a trend line using a wealth of different statistical functions there to show you, is this trending up or down at just such a quick glance. Now, for those of you that love looking at data but having a nice clean graph, you'll be excited about this next feature that's being shown, which is hiding the x-axis or the y-axis, or hiding even the legend or anomaly detection in order to give the cleanest possible line graph that you can possibly do. So that line graph right there, as you can see, is nice and clean and gives exactly the data that you want to focus on without having the mess that is associated with sort of, not mess, I don't want to call it a mess, but all of those extra details that are provided within that line graph. So think about that as you are delivering your data visualizations to other folks within the organization.
Thanks, Eric. I'm really excited for the line visualization stuff. I know we're not in person right now, so we can't hear any feedback from you guys, but we were super excited to stumble on some of those things that we're adding just in our line visualization library. There's a lot more cool things in there that we're going to be exposing over the coming months as well. But the show trend line overlays, showing some of those labels, we know have been long time requests, so excited to get that out there starting next week. Okay, so the last step that we really wanted to hit today for data democratization success is choosing the right delivery method for your audience. Just like each person has a preferred way to see data presented, as Eric just covered, people also have preferences in how they want to receive or have the data delivered to them. So one of the quickest ways to share data to users is to get a link to the project. You can get a link through Share Get Project Link, or you can right-click any panel or viz like you see here and get a link to that specific thing. I love to use the link sharing method. Anytime someone asks me a question in email or Slack and I pull the analysis together, I'll share a link back to them to really encourage them to get into the product, to consume what I've put together, and also be data curious and explore more on their own. These links will take people directly to the project or the part of the project that you grabbed the link from. So one area though where links sort of fall down is they do require the user to log in. And we know from talking to you guys that sometimes that can be a huge hurdle to data democratization. People just don't want to log in. So if your recipients are not likely to log in, we have a few options for you. Now, the first one is you can schedule or send immediately or download right away a PDF or CSV from the project. Now, if you schedule a PDF to be sent, it will send all of the displayed or visible data of the project as an email and a attached PDF. And this makes it easy for the user to simply click on the PDF, open it up, and start consuming the insights that you put together in the project for them. The PDF will render with really rich visualizations. It looks virtually the same as when you're in Analysis Workspace. There's just no interactivity in the PDF. It's very static. So PDFs are generally good for easy consumption of insights, where specific data points aren't really needed to be used in Excel to do more math on. And typically we see PDFs are pretty good for executives or novice users, but we'll talk about some more options if those folks are a little bit more data hungry and want to actually get into the tool and work with data more. Now CSVs are good for analysts who would like some numbers to calculate more in Excel or to put into other PowerPoint presentations or what have you. These analysts, though, maybe aren't the most familiar with Adobe Analytics, aren't as comfortable with logging in. So you want to be able to get them data without having to bring them into the tool. Now, we have another sneak for you guys. So as you know, there's lots of ways you can download CSVs of data from Workspace. You can do it through the project menu, which will give you the same thing as on schedule. And you can also right-click any visualization to download the displayed data. But what I'm excited to share is we're going to soon be adding, starting next week, the ability for you to download a full table of data. So while the UI will remain paginated at 400 rows, if you wanted to see all, I think it was 5,688 values in a table and send that to an analyst so they can dive deeper, you'll be able to right-click from any table and download items for your dimension. So this is going to be super helpful if you have a content team that reaches out and wants a full list of the pages that you have on your site so they can analyze further. Your marketing team may want a set of tracking codes that they want to look at, or maybe even your internal search team wants to understand all the keywords your users are typing in. You'll be able to use this right-click download items option to get a fuller set of data right out of Workspace with all of the metrics, calculated metrics, attribution that you have applied in the project. So another long time request, and really excited to be able to share that with you guys. That will start rolling out on Monday.
Woohoo!
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah,
this
I'm excited.
This is the only downside of a webinar, right? No in-person clapping.
Exactly.
Okay, so that covers PDF and CSV sharing for recipients. We have one more method for sharing data to users that may not want to log in, and that is through the mobile app. We earlier this year we released an Adobe Analytics mobile app, and I gotta say it's pretty awesome. So all mobile app dashboards start from within Workspace. It's a new project type. Instead of creating a browser project, you create a mobile app scorecard. Now, just thinking back to what Eric shared at the very beginning of the do's, one thing you always want to do before you dive into an analysis and share it out to a user is ask them how they prefer to receive the insights. If they're not going to log in and they just want data, at their fingertips, the mobile app is going to be the way that you want to build your analysis and share it out. So with the mobile scorecard building, you can drag over a set of different metrics. Each metric creates a different card, like you see here, for orders and unique visitors. Then you have the ability to add in segments so that they can slice and dice those cards by different filters. And you can even add in different dimensions that the user can drill into. So if they want to drill into orders a bit more and slice it by marketing channel, you can build in those cuts of data for them as well. Now, let's take a look at what the mobile experience looks like. This type of experience is one that we found works really well for executives, but really anyone in the organization that cares about data coming from Adobe Analytics could benefit from this. Now, if you follow us on Twitter, you know we promised a peek of Louis. He was going to make an appearance. Here he is in all of his glory with his fresh bandana coming out of the groomer. He wanted to say hello, everybody. So let's click on our mobile app here and see what it looks like. Now, I did say this is for people that don't want to log in, but they need to log in once, and after that, we can use FaceID or thumbprint ID to allow them into the app. When the app loads up, there's a lot of different settings. I think for my app, I have it set to dark mode and a more of a grid layout. There's a few different visual ways they can lay it out, but they'll see the metrics that you built in. They're able to apply filters at the top, like mobile customers, as you can see there. And they can even click any of the metrics to drill into it further. So one of the drill-ins that I added was marketing channel. So they're able to slice the orders metric by that. And this is all super seamless within the app at your phone. You know, if you're in a meeting and you need quick data points, it's good for you, the analyst, new users, and especially executives that need those data points wherever they are. I also wanted to mention that those last two slides of creating the scorecard and then showing you in the app, that took 2 minutes. That was a very live video of us creating it. So it is super simple. If you haven't set up a mobile scorecard yet, we highly recommend you try that out. Okay, so those are all the great options for people that don't want to log in, but we do have a lot of options for people that do want to log in and may want to interact with the data some more, starting with view-only projects. So when you go to share your project out, you may have noticed we now have 3 roles for project sharing: edit, duplicate, and view. So by putting somebody in a view-only project, you limit the interactions that they can do within the project. Now this is good for your newer users, those folks that may just be getting up to speed with Adobe Analytics, but maybe aren't super familiar with how to use Workspace or how you've structured your data. You can share a view-only project to them, and when they open it up, it'll look like what you see here on the screen. It's a super simplified version of the project that only has a few interactions in it. They can hover over different parts of the graphs to see more information. They can interact with drop downs that you've built in at the top, and that's it. It's a foolproof way for them to interact with the data in a very controlled way. The drop down filters allow you as the analyst to craft a more interactive experience for them. So as the user builds their confidence from view-only projects, the next thing you can do for them is encourage them to explore the training tutorial that we provide in our new project modal. So you can see it here on the screen. It's got that new tag next to it. And whenever somebody goes to new project, they'll be presented with this option. You'll see the training tutorial really walks them through all of the different workspace terminology that they need to be familiar with and takes them through how to build their first project. It sets a lot of foundational terms, such as, you know, what's a panel, what's a visualization, what's a table, all of these terms that we throw around a lot when we're talking about Workspace. They also can interact at each step. We provide business questions that are common questions they may ask themselves, like what is the top content on my site? And they can drag and drop into each step and build the project along with each of the prompts. At the very end, we offer a continued learning section that lets them dive even deeper into some more advanced visualization options in Workspace. And we also provide an answer key as well. So they're not just kind of flying blindly. They have a way to check their work and make sure that they've built things in the right way. So the training tutorial popped up in our new project modal, which is where we are also giving you the opportunity to present more templates to your users. So what we've seen people do with the training tutorial is customize that for their business and share out different versions of training tutorials for their team to leverage. But they also go even further and create custom templates beyond these training tutorials. For example, here we've built a marketing attribution project. And this is a way that we recommend teams in our business to analyze marketing channel success as well as attribution. And we want them to do it in a consistent, repeatable way. So going to Project Save as Template allows us to take this project and make it a template available through the new project modal. We often get asked if there's ways that a core analytics team or center of excellence team can put together a best practice analysis and push that out to their users. And saving custom templates is really the best way to do that in the product today. So again, we did marketing attribution here, but there's lots of different types of analysis that you can build and share out as templates to push out those best practices to your organization. Now, as your users mature with Analysis Workspace, we recommend that you almost like graduate them up the different project roles. So we talked about starting them as view only. And what you can do with the profiles we talked about earlier is actually put them in each of these buckets. So maybe start your new users in Can View, then have your analyst profile in Can Duplicate, maybe even have 2 levels of analyst profiles that you can put into Can Edit. These are essentially the user groups that you're sharing out to. And then from here, you can manage your users, and as they mature, move them from one group to the next within the admin console. Now, Eric, if you can animate just a couple times, you can also put individual users into each of these groups. And as Eric becomes stronger and stronger with using Workspace, you can move them up from View to Duplicate to Edit to give them more control over the projects that they're receiving. Now, how do you decide, what role to put each of these profiles in, or what role to put each of the users in? We talked a lot about, earlier about creating curated experiences, both from the data set and the components. And this is just one more thing that you can curate for your users. So how do you want them to receive the projects? What level of control do you want them to have over it? On this last slide where we compare, we share some tips on how to decide who goes where. In general, this is kind of what we see. Editors are people that you want to co-manage a project with. Maybe you have a team of analytics users that you all contribute best practices to your organization from, and you want to be able to share projects with one another, save changes, and really collaborate. So for those folks, typically they're your strongest analysts or part of the analytics team. You'll put them in the edit group. They get full interactivity. The left rail is there. They can save. They can also add recipients. Now, the duplicate role is good for people that are analysts, but maybe not quite ready for editor level. You want to be able to share projects with them. You want them to be able to fully interact, but you don't want them to click save and edit your base project. So they can use the left rail, they can interact, but they won't be able to save or add recipients to your projects. The last role, view, we mentioned is really good for folks that want to come in, they're data hungry, they want to interact with the data, but maybe they aren't super familiar with the left rail and how to drag things over, what goes where, what different data dimensions mean. So, typically we see these are executives where maybe a PDF just isn't enough, or newer users to the product. And the view only role, again, is the most limited in terms of interactivity, gets rid of that left rail, and it does not allow them to save or modify your projects at all. So keep these roles in mind the next time you go out to share a project, and think about your audience, back to the theme that we've been talking about this whole time, and what would be best for them to consume the data through.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. It's so much to consider when you've got all those different delivery methods at your disposal. So as a reminder, these are our recommendations for the 4 steps to drive data sharing and democratization across your organization. Think about your audience. Are you sharing to executives? Are you sharing to analysts or newbies? Create a scalable management structure. Take advantage of administration, curation, as well as VRS curation, and finally, project curation. Don't forget to simplify your insights. That means taking advantage of the visualizations that you have at your disposal, whether that means the actual data visualizations or even taking advantage of text boxes. And finally, choose the right delivery method. Do your end users need to analyze further or tie data to other systems using a CSV? Or is a PDF just perfect for them that they can have delivered to their email box every Monday morning? The last little suggestion that we have for you is all around following through to make sure that your program is working the way that you expect it to. And to do that, we highly recommend taking advantage of a capability that we call usage analytics within Analysis Workspace. All of the details are available at adobe.ly/aausage, all lowercase. And the suggestion here is to actually export the logs that explain how the different projects you're sharing and accessing are being used, ingest that data right back on into Analysis Workspace to not spy, but keep an eye on your users and the success or failures that they're having within the projects that you're sharing to them. This is a great way to stay on top of your data, your users, and support them in your data sharing efforts. Now, as Jen mentioned earlier, this webinar, as well as well over 100, perhaps even over 200 other videos are available within our YouTube channel. You can head to adobe.ly/aayoutube and we'll get this one up there as soon as we can. And then we also highly, highly recommend checking out the Adobe Analytics forum, which is a part of the Adobe Experience League. Within the forum and community, you can share ideas, ask questions, have discussions about all of the different Adobe Analytics related capabilities, including data sharing. So if you have feature requests for us around new ways to actually share data, then this is a great place to do so. And so, as always, you can find me on Measure Slack or Twitter or anywhere that's digital, smoke signals. You know what? If you happen to get them to my new home, then that'll work for me too. Thank you so much for joining. Jen, where are you available?
I am available in the same places. And also, if anyone's in New Jersey and can get together again in person, Eric and I live very close to one another. So maybe a New Jersey user group coming to you in the future.
Uh-oh, watch out for those.
Oh man, thanks so much everybody for your time today. We really appreciate it. Eric, a blast as always.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. And thanks everyone for joining. And Russ and Monique and everybody for helping make this possible. Maria as well. Enjoy the rest of your day and democratize that data.